I'm the co-executive director of Open Doors, and just wanted to say sincere appreciation for everyone who took the time to come to participate in democracy today, and for all of you, not only for showing up, but for running. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to put all this effort into trying to help out our state. I also wanted to thank some members of the Open Doors team, Brandon, Lo, Talia, and Lachlan, who helped put this event together. And the co-sponsors of the event, DARE, Direct Action for Resident Equality, Project Whoever Renew, more, and Clean Slate Rhode. So yeah, hopefully we can have a great debate and learn a lot more about the candidates who all on the ballot. So just as a little bit of context, Open Doors is an organization who, for the past 24 years, has been working in our state to support people that are justice involved, people who are unhoused. And in this work, we have helped thousands and thousands of people through these very difficult times to get their lives back together. Right now, we operate in 7 sites across the state, and so basically, we just see a lot of the struggles of people who, many of whom are some of the most directly impacted by the decisions of the Attorney General. We also, in 2006, led the Right to Vote campaign, which returned the right to vote to people on probation and parole in the state, over 15,000 people, some of whom are in this audience today and who can vote because Rhode Island passed that ballot referendum, giving them the right to vote back. So, round of applause for the Attorney General's race has perhaps never been more important than it is now in the state. From actions in federal court to an increasing role in everything from housing to healthcare, and a very large amount of power and discretion over all criminal matters. Also, we have not had a contested Democratic primary Attorney General race since 2010. So this is a particularly exciting time for us all to make a decision about a particularly important vote. So briefly, just want to go over the guidelines. We are going to try our best to have a debate, which means we'll be looking for opportunities for candidates to engage in thoughtful and active disagreement on stage. There'll be initially a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, followed by a series of questions, some of which will be asked by me and some which will be asked by some of our community sponsors on topics that they work on. We've also asked for audience question submission. Some people have submitted questions electronically. If you want to submit a question on a card, you can do that in the back. And if we have time, we'll ask additional audience questions. And I think that's everything. Any questions?
It's hard to hear you.
It's hard to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad. I'm not sure what to do. Because we have these 3 speakers.
It's better now
Is
because
it
you're
better
speaking
now?
louder.
Okay.
You gotta speak it.
So what's the secret, do you think?
Speak louder.
Just right there.
What I'm understanding is that this microphone is for this speaker, which is for the moderator, and that these microphones are for these speakers right here.
Well, that
So
makes
when
sense.
the candidates are speaking, you're gonna be hearing them from these speakers. So can you turn off your microphone?
Yeah.
And now can you turn on your microphone? Yep.
Hello, hello.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess we'll start with opening statements. We have time being kept in the back. And why don't we just move from left to right?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and to Open Doors for hosting this forum. My name is Keith Hoffman, And I'm running for Attorney General because I believe I have the energy and the experience to face many of the challenges that we are facing today in our state from the Attorney General's office. And I thought I'd start out by just telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Rhode Island. I went off for law school and then returned back home with my wife Rachel. She finished med school and I finished law school to come back and work in the Attorney General's office. And I rose up the ranks. I ultimately served as Attorney General Norona's Chief of Policy and Senior Counsel. And I was privileged to do a lot of work in the Attorney General's office that I love very much to serve our communities. I fought corporate greed that harms consumers. I fought for access to affordable health care for Rhode Islanders. I fought for civil rights and reproductive rights and equal rights for all of us. I fought for safer communities from gun violence. I fought for safe housing for children. And when the Trump administration came along, I was put in charge of planning and leading the fight in the Attorney General's office against the federal overreach that we were seeing and are continuing to see from the federal government. And I want to be the Attorney General because I want to make our state safer, stronger, and fairer for everyone. When I'm here tonight at Open Doors, I'm thinking a lot about fairness and how we can make our state fairer for those who are involved in the justice system, just as we make it safer for survivors and victims of crime, and also, people who are, using substance users or people who use substances, people who are experiencing difficulties in obtaining housing. There's so much work that we can do from the Attorney General's office to serve everyone in this state, and really that's why I'm running. So thank you all so much for your time tonight, and I look forward to speaking.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jason Knight. I am also running for Attorney General. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think that in these troubling and uncertain times, what Rhode Islanders deserve is a progressive champion to battle against the Trump agenda here in Rhode Island. I started my public service right out of high school. I joined the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy. I'm a veteran Navy of the submarine service. I was a nuclear power operator. I have 20 years of doing criminal justice work in our court systems, between being a prosecutor with the AG under Patrick Lynch and being a defense lawyer in my own solo law practice. And I've been a lawmaker at the General Assembly representing Barrington and Warren for the last 10 years. I gotta tell you, what gets me is when folks come along and they talk a good game, they don't do anything about it in politics. And I'm proud to say that I've taken my progressive values and I've put them into action. While the federal government and Donald Trump and the MAGA movement was trying to take away, and in fact did take away, the rights of women across this country to bodily autonomy, here in Rhode Island, myself and a very, very small group of Democrats got the Democratic leadership to take the issue seriously and install Roe versus Wade into the state law, protecting Rhode Island women. When we are suffering, while we are suffering under an epidemic of gun violence here in the United States, in Rhode Island, we took action and enacted some of the strongest gun safety laws in the nation over the last 10 years, culminating with the passage of the assault weapons ban, which was my bill I introduced in 2018 and pushed hard to get it over the line. It just became law just a few weeks ago here in Rhode Island. And when ICE came to Warren to snatch up a worker off one of our streets, I took action and worked with my Democratic colleagues in the General Assembly to try to put some guardrails around ICE's racist agenda of yanking anyone off the street who isn't white and saying, "Show us your papers." We did that just a few weeks ago. We put into law 4 things that represent what Rhode Island can do to fight back against this stuff. I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. And I'm very appreciative of you having me, and I'm thankful to Open Doors and all the sponsors tonight. Thank you.
You're on.
Okay, does this work okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to stand up just for openings and closings. I'm a trial lawyer at heart, so it comes more natural to me. I'm Kim Ahern. and I'm running for Attorney General. I'm so thankful to the organizations that are hosting us tonight, Open Doors, and all the partner organizations that are participating. Thank you so much for gathering us for such a critically important topic. I have served as a prosecutor under the past 3 attorneys general, and I want to take you back for a moment to my very first day as a special assistant attorney general serving under Attorney General Patrick Lynch. I walked into his office. He handed me a badge that I would carry with me for just shy of a decade. And then he handed me a piece of paper called the Rules of the Road. These were 11 rules that should guide every prosecutor, every lawyer at the department of the Attorney General. And the first rule was to always do justice and to always be cognizant of the shortcomings of the criminal justice system and cognizant and alert to the possibilities of injustice. I think it's the most important rule. It guided me through my entire career as a prosecutor, prosecuting over 1,000 criminal cases in what is now called the Special Victims Unit, so mostly crimes involving survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking and animal abuse cases. It guided me after I left the Attorney General's office and went on to be the Criminal Justice Policy Advisor for Governor Gina Raimondo, where I got to lead a working group dedicated to making the criminal justice system better. And after spending a decade in and out of the courts of Rhode Island, I knew that to be true, that it's incumbent upon all of us that work in the system to make it better for everyone involved, while of course keeping public safety at the forefront, but working with a lot of people that are in this room tonight. I'm so pleased to see you all, to help reduce recidivism, to work and make our reentry system better, and to make the system just a little bit fairer for all. We have a long way to go in this, but I'm honored to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much.
How's everyone doing today? Excellent, excellent. So my name is Joe Solomon, and I'm running for Attorney General to protect Rhode Island families. First of all, I want to say thank you to Open Doors and every organization for putting this on tonight. I think it's so important to hear from all the candidates to participate and see where we all come from and where we agree and where we disagree. So I've seen the justice system from every angle. For the past decade, I've been a bail commissioner. When someone gets arrested, I'm the one who shows up and I review the arrest and make the determination if a person's a danger or not. For the past 12 years, I've been in the legislature in the House of Representatives. And I've been introducing and writing legislation to protect Rhode Islanders. Some of that legislation includes the Elder Financial Exploitation Law, which would allow banks to stop scammers before they drain a senior's bank account. Additionally, the catalytic converter bill. You remember when catalytic converters were getting stolen left and right. A few years ago, we hear about it in the media. I passed the bill, wrote a bill, and passed the bill to ensure that that stopped. And we put the responsibility on those scrapyards to get the information from those catalytic converters. That's decreased by more than 80% in most cities and towns. And you don't hear about it anymore. And for the past 12 years, for the past 15 years, I've been an attorney, and I've prosecuted criminal cases in the Warren Solicitor's Office. So I've spent my career as a prosecutor, a bail commissioner, and an attorney, ensuring defendants get a fair shake from the justice system. The Rhode Island Constitution makes the Attorney General the chief law enforcement officer of the state. And I'll do my job regardless of who is involved, because no one is above the law, including anyone with a badge. If someone dies in a police custody or an officer uses deadly force, there's an independent investigation every single time, because a life is a life. I only have 10 seconds left, but I'm not running to learn this job on your dime. I've been doing this my entire career. And I thank you.
Thank you for all that. And I want to start with a question about affordable housing, a topic that is so urgent to Rhode Islanders across the state. And provide a little context and then ask for your thoughts. So just this week, a federal judge ruled that the town of Johnston was acting illegally when it tried to seize land by eminent domain, specifically to block 252 units of affordable housing. Our current Attorney General found an Open Meetings Act violation in this process in order to revote, but didn't get involved on the merits of the case. And it was a National Property Rights Legal Foundation that defended the housing in court. Since the AG doesn't enforce affordable housing law directly, in one legal tool you'd use to hold a town that abuses its powers to exclude affordable housing? That's the question. Can we start on the right? Jeff.
So you're asking if there's one tool that we could use?
Yeah, what tool would you use in a case like that, as an example, where a town is illegally excluding affordable housing?
I think that's, is there a microphone? I think that's one of those things that we have to see what's available. I would work with my team. I think that's first and foremost. One thing I can tell you is that in the General Assembly, we've been pushing affordable housing. You've seen the bills that we passed. I know Jason and I have voted on many of these to see more development in communities. And it's such an important thing. But we'd have to look at the facts and see how we could use the facts to enforce that. But I don't think there's a magic bullet into doing it. That's something that would bring the team together to ensure it.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So affordability is a top issue that I hear about every single day when I'm talking to voters across Rhode Island. And it really is not specific to one city or town. I've heard it daily about concerns about, or I'm personally concerned, am I going to be able to raise my 3 kids, and will they be able to afford to live and raise their own families here? And so it's a concern that should touch on every single Rhode Islander and every single community. And so the question about what legal tools are at your disposal, the Attorney General's office has a remarkable amount of abilities to investigate, to enforce laws. And so I'm thinking about the Civil Rights Unit, for example. So when I was at the AG's office, I worked closely with the lawyer who was the civil rights advocate. And we actually trained municipalities in civil rights violations and to be aware of that and how to enforce that. And so for me as the Attorney General, I would work with my team directly to make sure that first and foremost, cities and towns know what the law is. And then if they don't know what the law is, then we need to make sure of that. We need to make sure we're trying to implement the goals of what all these legislators, like Joe was just saying, have been doing for several years, which is trying to create more affordable housing at every price point across our state.
I gotta tell you, the thing in Johnston is really disturbing. Here in Rhode Island, we have a housing crisis. We just don't have enough roofs. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to work in the General Assembly to vote yes on all the bills that we have passed through Speaker Joe Shikarchi's time to try to at least remove some of the red tape angle of this and provide some money for housing. But I gotta tell you, I heard a member of the Johnston Zoning Board say, when they were talking about this eminent domain action, it says, basically they were like, we don't want a Chad Brown in Johnston. I mean, it was an outrageous and racist statement to the core. I couldn't believe I heard it, and I actually just heard it on the radio, replayed on the way back over here right now, tonight. I have to tell you, when it comes to making things happen, you know, the Attorney General, the first name in Attorney General's attorney, which means you have a client, you stand up for him. You look at the whole toolbox, all the tools, all the laws that you have available, and you see what you can put together to achieve a result. So to answer your question, what's the one thing? I think there's a lot of things to come together to put towns who do this sort of thing for those reasons on notice that we're not going to let that fly in Rhode Island, because when that kind of thing happens, it's hurting the people, and the Attorney General should stand up.
Thank you. When there's not enough housing, as there is not in this state, what happens? One thing that happens is that some landlords reduce the quality of the housing that's available. They can get away with it because there's less supply, and people just have to deal with it. And under those circumstances, children and adults can be exposed to lead paint hazards, can be poisoned. Okay. What's something else that happens? Prices go way up because there's just not enough housing stock. And what we see lately in Rhode Island is private equity companies buying up really large amounts of housing, and they can use the power of all the supply. They now control the drive prices for the rent. So it is a really serious crisis, and I have worked with families in the Attorney General's office where the children have been lead poisoned, and it is tragic. And this is a direct result of the housing crisis that we're in. And so it's incumbent on every community, in my view, to do what they can to expand affordable housing. We saw in Massachusetts an action by the Attorney General's office against a municipality that did not provide the affordable housing required. There was a particular tool that they had there that we do not have that allowed the Attorney General to move forward when the municipality was accepting state funds. We don't have that tool right now in Rhode Island. I would fully support it if the General Assembly would provide it to us. Absent that, I think that what would need to be demonstrated, and this is important, is a discriminatory intent on behalf of members of the council or zoning board that would allow us to bring a civil rights action. We only find out about that in the AG's office if members of the public come to us, sorry about that, with complaints. And so one of the things that's been so critical and needs to continue is creating mechanisms for the public to come to the Attorney General's office so we can learn about any challenges that are out there and see if we have tools that can address the problems that Rhode Islanders are facing.
I just realized there's like a sort of a superpower here, right? Just turn my mic on, and my mic stopped working. Just keep that in my back pocket. For our next question, we have Melanie from Dick.
Hopefully this works. Okay, it does. Nice. Okay, thank you. So Rhode Island allows people on probation to be held without bail based solely on a new allegation, even before they've been convicted of a new crime. DARE has advocated for bail on 32, which would create a presumption of release while still allowing judges to detain people when they are legitimate public safety concerns. For example, a man experiencing homelessness and struggling with alcoholism is currently being held without bail after being charged with shoplifting alcohol while trying to get treatment. If elected Attorney General, would you direct your prosecutors to seek release in cases like this? Why or why not?
That's tough. Jason, do you want to start?
All right, you got me? All right. So we're unusual in that the Attorney General is the top prosecutor in the state, right? The Attorney General is responsible for all the public safety decisions in the criminal justice system. And there's bail is a real issue because it's one of those questions where we're making decisions on somebody's liberty. So I think that under my administration, fact of the matter is that we are going to take an individualized approach to each and every person in the criminal justice system that my office comes across. There will be no blanket hold without bail orders on probation violation or frankly anything else. We'll make a considered decision for each and every individual to say whether or not we think that this person is such a danger to the community that there's nothing else that we can do in terms of a pretrial release or pre-probation release to keep the community safe. I think that in the situation that you brought up beforehand, it sounds to me like that's a perfect candidate for release. I have to tell you, I practice in Massachusetts. They have a probation violation system over there. It's very effective. It does not hold near the number of people that we do as automatic hold without bails when they're just presented on the allegation of a violation. So the AG needs to always be looking out for public safety, but need to be thoughtful and make individualized decisions, particularly when it comes to liberty.
That is a great question. So I serve as a bail commissioner, like I said previously. So when someone gets arrested, I make the determination if someone's a danger or not. But when someone gets violated, the Attorney General's office makes that determination, serves the individual with the violation, then it's automatic hold without bail. So I lose the discretion. So many times I've seen individuals who probably should be released, who probably should receive bail, but I'm unable to grant them bail because of this hold without bail the violation. So that really comes down to a policy decision with the Attorney General's office as to who they want to violate and who they don't want to violate. And I think, like Jason said, I think we really need an individualized response to it as opposed to a blanket. Because what I've seen is a lot of times, and I don't want to single out anyone in particular, but sometimes with the newer attorneys general, the younger ones, they're more inclined to violate everybody if the paperwork's submitted to them. However, I really think we need to look at that because some people really shouldn't be violated, and then only to find out that the next day when they go to court, the violation is withdrawn. So that's a day that an individual had to stay in intake that really they probably didn't belong in intake. So I think instead of being tough on crime, we need to be smart on crime, and that's how I want to do it.
Yeah, so I think that an individualized approach is the right way to go with violations. Now, I think that the key thing that we have to remember here is the scale of the work, the scale of people who are involved in our criminal justice system that fall under the Attorney General's office, and the challenge that we face in making sure that we are treating every individual who is involved fairly, because that is the key. There are circumstances that you raised, I would agree, is one where it, from the way it's described, that person should not be held. So what can we do? There are a few things. One is that we can, I believe that we'll talk about clean slate later, when we're adopting new data management systems within the office, as we need to do, we can have a better tracking mechanism for all cases that come in so that we can do a better job at implementing new policies across the office to make sure that the line attorneys who are carrying out the policies of the office are in fact doing what's best for the justice system. And I also think that we can one of the things that was noted was that some of our younger attorneys are new to the practice at times, which is always going to be the case. There are always new attorneys coming into our office, close to 260 people there at any given time. And we need to make sure that they're being trained adequately. And one of the things that I think we can do, and that I would do if I'm elected, is create a training institute, as exists in New Jersey, for example, to make sure that our younger staff are being well trained as folks come into the office and need to come up to speed on how to make these really important decisions that impact people's employment, housing, family situations, just such critical decisions that are being made, and they have to be made carefully, quickly, and in the interest of justice.
Thank you, Keith. Kim.
The question, can you hear me? The question's bringing up a much bigger issue, which is Rhode Island is an outlier across the entire country with our length of our probation. And this is kind of a small snapshot of a much bigger problem. And it's one that in 2015, that Governor Raimondo formed a whole group to look at seriously and say, this is not okay, that we are actually at the top of the list for the longest probationary sentences in the entire country. I think at the time we were maybe tied with, I think it was Louisiana, I'm not sure, certainly no New England state. And so I just want to recognize the bigger issue that your really good question is bringing up, and that ever since I've been involved in the criminal justice system in 2009, a number of us collectively have been working on it. And I just don't think we've seen the progress. I was actually trying to find it before I came here tonight. But to answer your direct question, I think individualized look at these is of course the way to go. And this comes down to the next Attorney General being able to sit around a table, not just with their staff, but with the judges, right? And making sure that we're moving in the right direction to try to account for what we have in this country, which is a substance abuse epidemic, a mental health epidemic, and people are not getting the services they need, and they're not going to get them in the intake service center.
Thank you. So I want to pause and thanks. push on this one a little bit, if we can, because for those of us who've been doing this work for a long time and around, we know how systemic this problem is, and also how really hard it is to fix. The injustices keep happening. We have solutions that are brought forward. A law was passed in 2010. There was a to reform probation law here. There was a huge conversation that happened under Governor Raimondo and around probation length that the Attorney General's office ended up pushing back against pretty harshly. And so I guess I'd say that for those of us who've been doing this for decades, we don't see the problem getting better. And if we had an Attorney General, what I'm hearing from all of you is you agree and you think we should not do what was just said. But if we had an Attorney General who transformed the process of holding people without bail, I mean, that would be truly sort of revolutionary, right? It would be very different from the approach that any Attorney General has previously taken. And so I guess I just wanted to ask if there are any specific rubrics or reforms that you would institute. Because the legislature and the governor has a lot of power here. But ultimately, a lot of this discretion is just up to you, the Attorney General. So can you provide us any more specifics about how you would keep the injustices from happening, while also fulfilling your duty to protect public safety in these instances of probation violation, 32F hold? Anyone who wants to answer that?
I'm on. All right. That's a great question, because when you get right down to it, it boils down to action. We can talk a lot about identifying the problems, but there's a thing in Rhode Island politics, and I have to tell you, being at the General Assembly for close to a decade, I'm a little over it. We talk things to death, but the action is always missing. So what can the Attorney General do to get their hands around this problem? I have an idea. Thank you. Listen, the decision to hold someone without bail or not is really very personal. You get the case, you get the police report or the witness statements or whatever it is, as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer, you look at it, and you're trying to make a relatively snap decision about the person who is charged or alleged to have done something wrong. You look at their criminal record, if they have one, if they're on probation, by definition, they're gonna have one, and then you're making a decision about, if I cut this person loose, do I think that they're going to do something else bad? Or, if you're the wrong kind of prosecutor, you say to yourself, if I ask for him to be held without today, well, he's gonna get started on his jail sentence now, and we'll just do all the formal paperwork later on, like actually finding them in violation. And we can't do that. So, under my administration, I would ensure that a senior prosecutor, someone who has a lot of time under their belt, is involved in these decisions. It would involve a bit of restructuring in the office to do this. And I would have a presumption of release for nonviolent offenders. And I would have this, and for violent offenses, I would have a senior prosecutor there working with a junior prosecutor to make the individualized decision about hold or not hold.
Anyone else wants to jump in on this?
Yeah, thank you. This is what I did for just shy of a decade, right? These are the types of cases I handled, and each prosecutor, and Jason knows this, he was there too, has a weekend a year when you're assigned to be on weekend duty. And that means that you answer the call day or night, and you go out to whatever police department calls you to assess what we're talking about. And it is an assessment, right? Like, you make an assessment in that moment whether or not you're, and I think COVID changed a lot of this. I was there pre-COVID. If you're going to drive, right, to Jamestown, or if I'm going to drive to Woonsocket to present that 32F that this question brings up. And so what we're trained to focus on then is really what Jason was just saying, like, would there be rubrics or standards? Like, the concern is what you just said. It's like, are we going to be presenting someone or not? And my mind always goes to, you want someone to be released, and then on, for example, domestic violence is a number of the cases I did where there's a concern, of course, with public safety. And so that would be some of the rubrics I would use in terms of like violent offenses to make these assessments. But one change that I would make is Listen, I started my career there. The first job I had in the law school was a law clerk at the Rhode Island Supreme Court, the highest court in Rhode Island. But then right after there, I go to the Attorney General's office to be, as I affectionately call it, a baby lawyer, right? And baby lawyers need tons of supervision, tons. They need a supervisor who can see them day or night. They need a supervisor who has an open office door policy. And most of the prosecutors start in the criminal division, in the district court unit, or the juvenile unit. When I was there, that was supervised by 2 different individuals. Now it's supervised by 1. So there's one person supervising 15 new baby lawyers to do all that really important work that you're bringing up. So those are some of the changes I would make, to maybe get more people supervising the younger attorneys so that they can work together and make these individualized assessments that we were just talking about.
To add to something that I said earlier, you know, one of the reforms that we really need in Rhode Island is additional services for people who are on probation. This is something that will bring down the recidivism rate that we've been talking about today. And you know, as much as I agree, do need a dangerousness assessment, we need training for the younger prosecutors who are making these determinations, and we need data to understand if there are issues within the system that we have now with regard to particular folks making these determinations. I think that we also really need to make a concerted effort for additional pretrial services. And this is mental health care, this is, you know, ensuring that people have access to housing, ensuring that people have advocates for employment. This is, I believe, creating a framework where people cannot be unreasonably discriminated against in seeking housing and employment because of their involvement in the justice system. And all of these things together will reduce the prevalence of this problem, and it is a problem that is leading to people being incarcerated and violating when we can prevent that from ever happening in the first place by making sure that people have housing, employment, healthcare that they need.
Like I said from the beginning, training is so important. We need to ensure that the younger attorneys general that are on call, the ones who are taking the violations, hearing about the violations in the middle of the night, you know, early in the morning, on weekends, on holidays, that they receive the necessary training that to make the determination if a person's a danger or not. And that's what's key. Because yes, there are a lot of times when there's a violent offense, the new offense is a violent offense, could be another domestic, and you're really concerned about if this person is going to do something again, and that's when you absolutely violate that individual. But as a bail commissioner, I've seen so many times, over and over, someone getting violated on a disorderly conduct or a shoplifting, where they're not a threat to someone else. It's something that could be addressed at the next court date, as opposed to indefinitely holding this person in court for a significant amount of time. And I know there's some lawyers in the background over here who would know exactly what I'm talking about. It really comes down to the training. And to do that, let's work together. I want to work with the courts. I want to work with defense counsel. And I want to work with the attorneys general. And that's how we're going to get real solutions, because clearly we all feel that we need to do more. Thank you.
Before I ask my next question, is someone from Project Web or Renew or more here? Ask your question. If you are, just come to the front, and we'll do that soon. So the next question is about police accountability. Another example from recent Rhode Island history. So police officer Joseph Hanley was convicted of assaulting, handcuffed, or shot or yet after a mistrial on appeal, your predecessor's office let him plead no contest to a misdemeanor with only 1 year of probation. And the Leobor panel that imposed just a 45-day suspension and ordered him back onto the Providence force. When an officer is caught on video beating a handcuffed individual, when you commit to charging a felony and refusing misdemeanor pleas, what would you have done differently in the Hanley case? And can we start with Joe?
No one is above the law. No one is above the law. Very simple. and we will hold anyone accountable who has committed a crime. Very simple as that. One thing that we have done in the General Assembly is that we have reformed the legal law. You know, so we've changed the process to hold individuals accountable when they're doing something wrong. So, you know, I'm committed as Attorney General to enforce the law against any individual who is committing an offense. Thank you.
So, I don't care if you're a police officer or an individual, if you are caught on camera committing a violent offense, and I think we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, that is how we are going to handle every single case when I'm the Attorney General. So, hard stop. It should not matter if you have a badge or you have a uniform, right? That is the standard when we think of the Lady Justice, justice being blind. Like, that's the goal of the criminal justice system. But of course, we're so far away from that goal right now. And so I think that a few things on this topic. When I was working in the governor's office, I worked very closely with my former office, the Attorney General's office, to pass what I think was the first in the country, mandating the entire state of Rhode Island police departments have to wear body cameras. And then we got them funding to do it too. And I personally advocated for that, to use those COVID relief dollars that came to our state at that time, so that no department could say no. That funding was not a barrier. And I think this has made a tremendous difference, and it will set us on a path to be able to actually prove these cases going forward.
I think Rhode Island has come a long way in how we handle police officer discipline, but it's got a long way to go. I think that in the Hanley case, which was terrible, it's terrible that it's been dragged out this long, that it's taken this long to get to some conclusions about it. I don't want to get too in the weeds on Hanley, but I can say this, and I think you've heard it from the other candidates as well. Part of being the Attorney General and administering a system where everyone has equal justice under the law means that you administer the system such that everyone has equal justice under the law. You make your decisions based on the facts, not based on the anger and the emotion. So if the facts support a particular charge, and you think you can prove it in court, then you should bring the charge, right? And you should do it quickly and try to resolve it quickly. On the police officer discipline side, we did reform the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights to take away the power to sort of pick your own judge and jury if you're an officer who is charged with misconduct. It is an entirely different system now, run by a judge with an outside attorney on the panel and trained officers who come from departments not the same department as the accused officer to sit in judgment on that person. And Hanley, I think, is under the old system. He's like the last case under the old system, and you see why the old system was really terrible. I think the next step that Rhode Island can take is that we should get into a certification process for our officers, where an officer can be decertified if they engage in violent misconduct, and it's outside the jurisdiction of the chief of the city and the county.
There we go.
This is such a good question, an important question, because if people, if Rhode Islanders don't have faith in police officers and police departments, then there cannot be progress forward in community police relations and the criminal justice system. And I can tell you that the reforms that we have made in Rhode Island are so critical, are the beginning of a lot of good progress that we can make, and there's a lot more we can do, and I'll try to get through some of it. So what have we done? In the old days, the only police cases, excessive use of force cases that would come to the Attorney General's office in general, were in cases involving the death of an individual, okay? There were felony cases might also, if there are allegations of a felony, but a lot of cases wouldn't come in. In 2020, we changed that. So now all cases that are referred by a department, sometimes by individuals, by complainants, that involve an allegation of excessive use of force are reviewed by the Attorney General's office. We have prosecuted misdemeanors, felonies, we have won cases, we have lost cases. It's critical because members of the public need to know that there's an independent set of eyes on these cases. And of course, where the facts support a felony, charge a felony. Facts support a misdemeanor, charge a misdemeanor. Body cams have been very important to this. They'll continue to be. The last municipality in the state just adopted body cams, Smithfield, very recently. We've got to make sure that they continue to have funding for those programs as the funding runs dry. And there's a lot of work we got to continue doing here to make sure that everybody in our communities has faith in the police officers that are there to serve the
I'm gonna try again to push on this one, just because once again we're here with this extremely controversial topic, very difficult to solve, and I think it is good that everyone supports the reforms that happen, but the conversations around even the reforms that have happened have been extremely contested. So back to when the Libor reform was passed, there was a mini revolt on the House floor over exactly which version of the bill would pass as stronger or less strong, and there were a lot of people who thought that the bill that did pass was not strong enough. On the issue of body cameras, there's been a lot of contested examples of when body camera footage was released or not released. So maybe, Talia, could we do just a 30-second sort of rebuttal time frame instead of the full 90 seconds? But if anyone can pinpoint something that they would have done differently in an example of a police accountability or police use case or the Libor legislation that ended up passing, that you would distinguish as a necessary shift that you would support versus what has in fact happened so far. That would be, I think that would be helpful for us to understand some of the different distinctions.
So one thing that I think we need to do better at is quickly, completely writing reports on excessive use of force cases where we have declined to charge, and to adequately explain to everybody what happened in a circumstance where the public can very easily be left hanging for months about a case that is really in everybody's mind. And I think it's really important to let everybody know that the cases have been fully vetted. You know, I believe that rebuilding this trust between the Attorney General's office and the public police departments is, you know, it's one of the most important jobs of the Attorney General. It's also something that is going to take daily effort to ensure that people do trust the determinations that we make.
I mentioned this in my longer answer, but I'll reiterate. What I would have done differently in the Libor bill, what I would have liked to have done differently is add in the certification, decertification process so that on a credible allegation of use of force, that regardless of what happens in the Bill of Rights hearing, if the police officer standards board can take it up and determine whether or not there should be an automatic decertification. It's basically like a driver's license to be a cop, and they can take it away, and it happens outside the individual police department.
I strongly believe that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so I think we need to do a much better job listening to the community, being out in the community. A lot of people don't feel comfortable coming to 150 South Main Street. It's a scary government building with big barricades up front of it and police inside of it, right? The Attorney General's office actually has security leading into it. I'm giving you that background because prior AGs, I think this started under Shelter White House, but I'm not totally sure, actually got out into the committees and had full-time offices, like for example in the Mount Hope neighborhood. And I think pending available funding, that's something we should really consider doing again, so that everyone in the community feels comfortable coming to our office, coming to our prosecutors, and being able to tell your story and feel heard and listened.
So, question, I'm going to answer the question. So, we need to move, I think it's important that we realize that we move the ball forward on Newborn. That sometimes we may not always get 100% of the law that we want, but if we can move it in that direction, move it in a positive direction, then the next year we can come back for more. Because some of the laws that were passed were huge hills, huge mountains to overcome. And had we not taken that little step, we may not be where we're at now. We'd still be back at square one. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on to the next topic, but if you want to throw in the answer to that last one, that's a good question, that's fine too. So we have here Sophia from Amore who wants to ask a question.
So my question is, attorneys general in California, Maryland, and Massachusetts have issued public reports, sent demand letters, and litigated over ICE detention conditions. Would you commit to an annual public report on the Wyatt, as California's AG does for detention facilities within the state?
Kim, can we start with you?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love this crowd, by the way, because everyone's so supportive and clapping for everyone before they ask a question, after they ask a question. It really is like a very nice, heartwarming crowd to be in. And that's an excellent question. And it's been on my mind too, because what we're seeing play out from ICE, and obviously right into federal detention facilities right here in Rhode Island, is tragic, heartbreaking, and appears to be a travesty of justice. And so, like so many other Rhode Islanders, I've been appalled, shocked by what I have seen play out in videos, whether they're in Warren or they're in Maine, right? And so the Attorney General needs to be the last line of defense as the state prosecutor, certainly first and foremost if anyone's committing a crime, to charge them. And specifically about the Wyatt Detention Center, if we have the authority to do it, I would do it. And I would first and foremost go meet with Rob Bonta. I saw him at a Democratic AG conference a few months ago. And this would be a follow-up I would do immediately as becoming Attorney General.
Oh, come on.
Wyatt is, of course, a quasi-entity. It's a federal detention center created by state law. And so if we weren't able to have the authority to do it, I would go right to the General Assembly and ask them to amend that statute and give me the authority to do it.
There's no way that anybody could say anything, because I got something to say to this panel.
Say it.
Joe, can we just let
That's not
people
you.
finish their answers? Sorry, John. Sorry, John. I also, if you could submit the question, I'm just asking because it could be on a topic that we have covered. I know, like we worked a lot on probation reform issues before, and we covered that topic. So, do you mind submitting the question to Brandon first, so that we can just?
I'd rather say what I want to say to this panel.
Yeah, I understand, John. I want to finish allow them to answer the question first. That's okay.
No, the reason why I want to say that. Okay, don't give me hype. Don't give me hyped up. All right. Okay.
We'll come back to this, but Keith, do you want to answer this question? Sorry, you asked a good question. I want to respect her question as well. Yeah.
I believe that the next Attorney General is going to have to do everything within their power to ensure that Trump's ICE does not break the law in Rhode Island, whether they are enforcing an immigration detainer or whether they are detaining somebody at the line. And if we have the power to do an annual review, then absolutely. I think that I don't believe we do now. And so I think that we would need to pass a law that I would certainly support in order to do it, to ensure that people who are held at the Wyatt are held safely, are are held in humane conditions and are not subject to abuse. I think that's critically important because what we're seeing out of ICE right now with no training, insufficient training, insufficient policies to protect people, insufficient procedures to protect people, creates the environment in which ICE is really reckless and people are dying. And we cannot accept that in this state.
You know, the thing about the attorney generals that I came up with is that all the effort was on the front end. It was all about the charge, it was all about the crime, it was all about getting to court, finding someone guilty, fighting for people's victims' rights. And that's important. That is absolutely the job, but it's only half the job. The other half of the job is on the back end. The other half of the job is saying that once somebody has been found guilty, once somebody has been detained, once their liberty has been taken away, are we treating that person humanely? Are we promoting rehabilitation? Are we doing what we need to do to come out the back end of the criminal justice system with someone who's not going to go in again? And the philosophy of that says that the AG should absolutely be involved in monitoring all the correctional activity in the state, not just the Wyatt. The Wyatt, right, holds federal prisoners who are charged with federal crimes, and it holds ICE detainees. They should absolutely be open to us and be open to our inspection. It shouldn't stop there. The AG should have a role in eyeballing and basically being an overseer, so to speak, or looking over the correction system to make sure that that's operating the way it's supposed to, constitutionally and humanely. That would take legislative changes, but I absolutely would support it.
It's a great question, interesting question. So I don't believe that the Attorney General's office has the authority to do it on its face. However, I'm the type of person who's always willing to think outside the box. So that's where we can use their interactions with the state, with the city, such as Central Falls, and put strings in there, attach strings to it. That in order to work with Central Falls, which we do have authority over, in order to work with state entities, we could require them to report. And if they do not report, that's when we would make it so that those entities would not work with Wyatt or whatnot. So we have to think outside the box in this regard. But one thing I will do as your next Attorney General, I will hold the federal government accountable where we need to. When they're threatening Rhode Islander rights, I will file suit. I will work with other Attorneys General across the country, especially the Democratic Attorneys General, to ensure that the administration is held accountable.
Thank you. So for the next question, we had a question about prison conditions in the state facility. So this question was sort of submitted from multiple organizations that we work with, including the Stop Torture Coalition. So Rhode Island's prison system has experienced more than double the national average of in-custody deaths recently. If elected Attorney General, what specific actions would you take to investigate these deaths, increase transparency, and ensure accountability when people die in custody? And we start with you, Joe.
Or would you do nothing like put in a run?
So I believe it's important to get all the records as to how these individuals passed away. What was the causation? Many times, and a lot of times it's not reported, there are a lot of suicides. And it's absolutely awful. And we need to get to the bottom as to why these deaths are occurring. And if someone if something happened where someone murdered someone in prison, we need to hold those individuals accountable. There's no question about it. Because like I said, no one is above the law. But we need to, as the next Attorney General, I want to have access to all those records. I do want to do reports and investigate what is going on, because at the end of the day, we all need to work together, because no one wants to see any more deaths in prison.
No.
I have spent a lot of time behind the walls. Starting first at Roger Williams Law, when I got to be in the criminal defense clinic with Andy Horowitz, who's here today. And Andy's a great professor because he didn't want young law students representing people charged with crimes without first spending a day behind the walls, knowing exactly what those people were going through. And then I spent a lot of time there as a prosecutor because a lot of our witnesses and confidential sources and other victims are behind the walls. And then I spent a lot of time there as governor's legal advisor to try to find ways to make the prison system just a little bit better and humane. And it's extraordinarily hard. And I'll never forget the first time I went there with Andy and with my law school classmates, my drive home. Because it felt like the best drive I'd ever been on. And I mean that. Because until you've actually seen what people are going through when they're living there, you can't imagine it. I still can't. I can't actually put myself in their shoes, but I will try as hard as I can because that's how I was raised. And as the next Attorney General, I would do everything I can to work to make it a better, more humane place, and especially to get to your exact question, investigate deaths. Investigate deaths for why they're happening. That is entirely within the purview of the Attorney General's office, in particular if there are crimes being committed behind the walls. I worked with prosecutors that prosecuted correctional officers. Just like I said earlier, no one is above the law, and that goes behind the walls too.
Just like I said before, the Attorney General should absolutely be involved in overseeing and eyeballing, keeping an eye on prison operations. Not running the prison, that's the Department of Corrections, but having full access to see inside each and every square inch of the facility, each and every policy, each and every step that's taken to care for the people who are inside, and to investigate and pull on the carpet each and every person who might be involved in an incident that results in an inmate's death. And that's a multi-pronged effort, but it's going to start with supporting legislation and funding to put body cams on all the COs. We just had that bill in the judiciary this last session, and it got a very lukewarm response. It was absolutely opposed by the Correctional Officers Union, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You shouldn't be afraid of the body cam. The police departments know that. The ACI needs to learn it as well.
It's critically important that the prison system, the ACI in Rhode Island is well run, it's humane, it is treating inmates fairly and preparing them for re-entry in the appropriate cases. We have a lot of tools here. All right, so what's the first one? The first tool is when a correctional officer breaks the law, we can and should prosecute. And we do that, and we'll continue to do that when I'm elected. The second thing that we can do is, where there are systemic violations of any law by any state agency, we can hold that agency accountable, including the Department of Corrections. Third, we're the state's lawyer. For those that don't know, we have a lot of different hats that we wear at the Attorney General's office. One of them is that we defend the Department of Corrections in a lot of cases where the state gets sued. And that allows us to counsel the department on how not to get sued. In other words, how to create better policies, procedures, training, etc., put in place more cameras in order to make sure that wrongs are redressed before they occur. And fourth, we can and should support legislation to make the prison system safer. That means for the inmates and the COs, right? If we have a functioning prison system, it will make it safer for everybody, and making sure that it's humane and that people are really being prepared, again, for reentry when we can. Thanks.
Thank you all. So I'm going to portray, if you haven't already noticed, that I'm not entirely an objective moderator. I am an advocate for an agency that does a lot of this work, and so we were heavily involved in the police, the correctional officer body cam bill. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to follow up on Jason's support of that bill to see if any of the rest of you would also support that bill. It's in many ways a non-controversial bill, but it has become controversial because of the correctional officers union opposition to it. They have an extremely powerful union, and anyone from a state legislature to an attorney general can find themselves in a difficult position. So would any of the rest of you support that legislation?
I've never been a legislator, but I think what you say is good bill, good passage, right? Yeah, so if I was a legislator, 100%.
So I have not looked at this bill, and I think it sounds like a good thing. I would want to know why the correctional officer union opposes it. I think that
Oh, come on.
no, I mean I think that's a fair thing to say. One thing that I think is really important is that body cams, for those of you that know how the body cam policy works in the state, is they're not on all the time, right? They're on before interaction with a member of the public. And for COs, I think they're kind of constantly involved in, they're in close proximity with inmates. I think that having cameras everywhere is really, really important. I don't know if that mandates necessarily body cams, but I think it sounds like a very good thing, and it sounds like something that I would support pretty well again. Yeah, and that's right. And clearly there shouldn't be blind spots. And so if that's the primary concern, but what I would commit to doing is, I can give you an answer in the next 2 days.
I'm open-minded to it, but what I
That's
think
right.
is most important is to get everybody to sit at the table and discuss the legislation. So many times we have different sides on completely opposite sides of the issue, refusing to discuss it, sit in a room and whatnot. I've always learned as a legislator that most people agree on 80% of things. If we can get everybody to sit down at the table, let's agree on the 80%, and then we'll fight back and forth about the other 20% and go from there. Because I think if we did that, we could alleviate a lot of concerns on both sides of the issue to see if we can get that done. But I think it's so important that we also acknowledge that there's also privacy of the inmates who are currently in there, that they may not want to be on body cam for some of the instances where they protect them in some instances, and then in other, it's a kind of violation of privacy. So, thank you.
You're already on camera.
Thank you. So we're going to follow up with a question that Brandon's going to ask that has been submitted by the Clean Slate campaign that touches on so many Rhode Islanders, and this is the topic of expungement. The Clean Slate Rhode Island campaign released data this last year that about 1/3 of Rhode Islanders have a criminal record. So these questions are relevant to so many of us. Randy.
Thank you. How you doing, everybody? So this question in regards to expungement and clean slate covers people with old criminal records have many legal obstacles that prevent them from finding housing and employment, and their records will follow them for decades, sometimes their entire lives. The Clean Slate Act would automate the expungement process, immediately clearing the records of approximately 77,000 people who already qualify for expungement but have not achieved it due to the difficulty of the process. Do you support the Clean Slate Act? And if not, why not? What else would you support to expand fair chance opportunities for people with criminal records? That is the question.
Kim, do you want to start?
First, the question is just bringing up and really driving home that most people are impacted by this. And because you're impacted by it, it affects so many other things. Whether you can get housing, whether you can get a job, whether you can get that license and actually go to work. And so it's just critically important that people have access to be able to access what the General Assembly just passed, in particular the updates to the expungement laws. I am very proud of the work we did as a state on this in cannabis, actually. So I was the first head of the Cannabis Control Division. And as part of the Rhode Island Cannabis Act, the General Assembly should be commended for this. We passed a bill that took all non-violent marijuana offenses and automatically expunged them. About 30,000 Rhode Islanders benefited from that. And we worked on that collectively and collaboratively with the judiciary, and so I know we can do it again. And we should, because it's extraordinarily hard. For about a year of my practice, I went into courtroom 9. Courtroom 9 is the busiest courtroom in the state of Rhode Island, 150 cases every single day. Every day that I was in that court, someone approached the bench, had a case on to get a case expunged. And by the way, they had to pay a criminal defense attorney about $500 to $1,000 to do that, and they had to miss work to be there. And oftentimes, they were denied. And so it's just extraordinarily not fair. If we have a law in place the General Assembly passed, we should be making it easier, not harder, for people to get their records expunged.
So I absolutely support the Clean Slate Act, and I think it's critically important. But to go bigger than that, right? And because I think that's all the question. How are we going to ensure that people who have a criminal record, have access to housing, have access to employment, can live and improve their lives? And this gets back to the recidivism rate too, right? That we're talking about earlier. So first of all, automatic expungement is going to take a big effort to implement. And I think it would be a great thing to do that with a new case management system in the AG's office. I mentioned that earlier. I think it would be very, very beneficial to the system of justice in this state if the AG's office had really a best-in-class case management system. But I also support statutory frameworks that ensure that people can get access to housing and employment when they have a criminal record. There are frameworks like this in New Jersey, for example, where people cannot be unreasonably discriminated against because of a conviction status, just like you can't be discriminated against because of their familial status or race or religion, etc. I also think that we need to make sure that we are providing services to people. I've hit on this a few times tonight, but we really need to focus on this as a state. We have got to be working with our courts. Now, a new presiding justice of the Superior Court, Judge Malabano, we can make sure that we are helping people re-enter the system. I think we need a re-entry court like we have at the federal level, and we can reduce the recidivism rate by ensuring people have access to healthcare, housing, and employment in this state.
Thank you. I need 20 minutes on this. The thing is action. And when I first got into the General Assembly, you could only expunge one misdemeanor or one felony. We've changed that law so that you can expunge multiple misdemeanors. And now this year, we passed a law which allowed you to expunge multiple felonies as well, too. So we've moved the needle on this topic so importantly, because it's so important. As we know, it's so difficult to get a job with a criminal record. Prior to being elected to the General Assembly, I helped draft legislation with Representative Scott Slater, who's been a phenomenal advocate on this, ban the box, which would allow people with a criminal record to apply for a job and get that first interview. Because so many times, especially when this bill passed, it was so difficult to get a job because the economy was horrible at that time. And this would prevent employers from asking on the initial application whether you've been convicted of a crime. And that gave so many more people an opportunity. So I think this is a great bill. I want to work on the fine details as to which would be automatically expunged. But what I will say is, in the General Assembly, we got past that bill that automatically expunged all those marijuana offenses from people's records. And I think that's so important. Yes, be proud of that. Thank you.
You know, but at the same time, the same General Assembly put a $100 fee on expungements to close the budget gap. Right? We had that for years. And that was stupid, and it was exactly the wrong direction from the conversation that we're having today. I drafted the bill and got it passed to remove the expungement fee, to make sealing of your felonies automatic, to get rid of court costs of the indigent. So my bona fides on this are clear. I think that once somebody has gone through the criminal justice system and they've been found guilty, they've paid their debt, they've done what they do, we should be doing everything that we can to get them back up on their feet. And expungement is a great start. Keep talking about some of the things that come later. So your question was about the clean slate bill. I support the clean slate bill. It would basically make anything that you're eligible for under the law today for expungement, automatic. And I got to tell you, just in practice, the judges have discretion these days. I've been doing expungements, I think, every day of my career since I first went to the AG's office. And I've only seen the judge use their discretion to say no, maybe once or twice in 20 years. It's just, they don't do it. If you meet the qualifications, you get it. So let's just cut out the middleman and pass it. This is the simplest bill ever. We could have passed it like in a heartbeat this past session and done the multiple felony bill as well. But, you know, getting things done in Rhode Island can be hard. And this is where I want to say, as your Attorney General, I'm going to put the attorney and Attorney General and act and push on behalf of the people of the client. Thank you.
Thanks. I just really want to recognize Senator Basilian here, who sponsored the multiple felony expungement bill that you, many of you referenced. And yeah, although certainly we're looking for opportunities for debate, glad to hear that everyone supports the clean slate bill. I also think it's non-controversial, but from the perspective of Attorney General, I think it can be, because it's in many ways taking away some of the ability for the Attorney General to intervene in expungement cases and oppose expungement filings. So I am excited to hear that so many of you. Jason, did you have anything to add on that? Yeah.
You know, when I was a baby lawyer, and I was there, I was in courtroom 9, and an expungement came through, and it was a manslaughter case. But the person had received a really low sentence, and they met the criteria on the manslaughter case. Now, you don't see manslaughter cases come through on an expungement every day. But I looked at it, and I said, you know what, this person meets the criteria, no other criminal record. I didn't really know what happened in the case, but I was prepared to go into court and to say, no objection, judge, go ahead and do it. Or use your discretion, but the AG is not going to object. And I got slapped down by my supervisor because that was a political case. And it turned out it involved a police officer. It involved a police officer in some town somewhere, and it was political. And I got slapped down. And that's one of the problems with discretion, right? It always has to be used appropriately. So I'm going to reiterate again, for 20 years, I've never seen one single reason not to say expungement should be up.
And like I said, I owe you all an opportunity to jump in when you have something to say in the future in this debate. So the next question, I think we have from Rycare. This question was actually submitted by Weber Renew, but Ashley Perry, I don't see her here. So yeah, thanks for filling in.
Ashley has big shoes to fill, so I'm happy to ask the question, but take none of the credit. You can't hear? Okay. I will speak louder. Prosecutors have significant discretion in drug cases, including whether conduct should be charged as simple possession or possession with intent to distribute, and whether someone should face prosecution or be referred to a diversion or treatment program. How would you direct prosecutors in your office to exercise that discretion fairly and in a way that promotes better outcomes for people with substance use disorders?
Joe, do you want to start?
I think that's a great question. It's so important because so many times we see the same individuals going through the system over and over again, especially with substance use disorders. And we just need to do more. We need to ensure that they get the treatment and that they're not stuck with a criminal record that's going to change their life forever. As a legislator, possession was a felony, and we reduced it to a misdemeanor. And I think that's so important. Yeah, we've changed that, and we need to do more in that regard because we're not done. We're just starting, and we need to ensure that people get the treatment that they need, so they're not going through the system over and over again. because it costs a lot more to house someone in intake in prison than it does to see them succeed and contribute to society. So I want to see people succeed, because when one person succeeds, the whole state succeeds.
We have a crisis of mental health and substance use disorder on our hands as a society. And the next Attorney General has so many opportunities to help make just a small difference. And so it's a great question, and Joe hit on that the General Assembly already took some steps in this regard by taking some of these drug cases and making them just a little less serious, so that you do follow a pathway to recovery, to not having a permanent felony on your record, for example, which is significant. What I did after I left the AG's office, as I said at the beginning, is I went and I led the justice reinvestment work that Governor Raimondo was doing at the time, and I'm incredibly proud of some of the outputs of that. Like taking the Superior Court, which is where felonies go, and having a permanent diversion court there to divert people away from the traditional criminal justice system. We also created a new drug court so that individuals could go and get services and not be prosecuted and just go to jail. We have a long way to go in this regard to make sure it's working. And we need a data-informed approach going forward to make sure we're studying the outputs of it to see what we can do better. But I'm proud as a state that we've started to take these steps to take drug cases in particular off the pathway of traditional felony prosecution and opening up lines so that individuals have ways to work with Forever Renew, to work with so many of the organizations that are working so hard to bring down our overdose rate. And you should be commended for that, and all of your colleagues, because you are saving lives.
I think that's a great question, and I think that we have to recognize. Listen, the Attorney General is here to protect public safety. There are serious, and I mean serious, drug trafficking networks that go through Rhode Island. We need to do everything that we can to disrupt them and to take those folks who are responsible for them and make sure that they are incapacitated in such a way that they can't engage in that conduct again. But when it comes to the person who's at the tail end of that trafficking ring, the user, somebody who is using, I think that there's been a tendency in law enforcement to just use any excuse they could to bring the harshest charge they possibly could. If somebody has, these days the possession law is 10 grams. If it's 11, then, there are folks out there who are uniformed who are going to say, oh, must be a possession with intent case. Or you're caught with some stuff and maybe you got $100 cash in your pocket, or maybe $500 cash, but it must be possession with intent. I think that the narcotics unit at the AG's office, you need to be really mindful about the practices of folks who are not, in fact, traffickers, and to really be thoughtful before they bring with possession with intent case. They should be really looking for proof beyond a reasonable doubt in the evidence that's being brought to them by the police of actually being part of the drug trafficking network as opposed to being a user. And I want to piggyback on some of those comments about the great work that Weber Renew is doing, and Senator Basilian, the Justice Assistants as well, and all the groups. I'm glad and proud as a General Assembly member to have voted to make Project Weber Renew possible. And it's one of the first, we're the first state in the union to do it. Great job.
So the goal is that when you have a serious felony, including a drug trafficking ring, for example, of course you're going to prosecute them aggressively, seriously. But folks who are really suffering, right? Who are suffering out there, there are a lot of social issues, employment, housing, lack of access to health care, including mental health care, that contribute to this epidemic of substance use that we're seeing. And we want to make sure that when those folks get involved in the justice system, they get access to services, and ultimately at the end of going through the program, their charge can be expired. And so, diversion. The diversion courts that Attorney General Arona advocated for and then our office implemented over the last 8 years, alongside the courts, PDs, now 25% of felony cases in this state go through those diversion courts. That is a very good thing. And it means that people can get back on the right track, get back up on their feet, and continue to live a good life and not be subject to, you know, something that will not allow them to get access to employment, right, if they ultimately have this felony record. We need to do more. I think that there are expanded opportunities for diversion programs. I think that better case management and data management will help us understand new pathways and make sure that people are getting access to services in line with the courts, et cetera. I think there's a lot of work that we can do here, and I think it's a critical part of addressing this epidemic of drug use that has been really made a lot worse by some of the actions of some of the biggest companies in America that were putting opioids out in the streets recklessly for the last 10, 15 years.
We're at 7:30. I'm thinking we would do about another 3 more questions, which would take us to about an hour and a half of debate. I know Stephanie is here. Does anyone else need another water? Okay. So we have an audience submitted question from Kristen.
Good evening. See, it works really well when you know how to use it. So, I would just like to know if you support the closure of the Wyatt Detention Center. Why or why not? If yes, would you testify to the effect during the legislative session?
So, I'm going to be straight with you, because that's what I've committed to as a politician since day one. It is not an easy question about the Wyatt, and here's why. It holds folks who are charged with federal crimes here in Rhode Island, and so when they're being held, pretrial detention, the families don't have to travel up to New Hampshire or over to Plymouth or over to Connecticut to see them. Right, because half that place is being, where'd you go? Just, where are you?
Oh, I came with.
Oh, there you go. I was looking for you. So half the place is being used for federal detainees. I think they absolutely ought to end their ICE contract. I just want to make it very clear about that. I think ICE is an immoral. I think it's been co-opted by President Trump I said it in my opening, to enact a profoundly racist policy of yanking anyone who isn't white off these streets. I don't think there's any legit law enforcement thing about how ICE is put together these days. And I would totally support Wyatt not taking ICE anymore. I want to see Wyatt closed. But I'd like to have a community conversation about how the best way to do that is, because I have visited with folks who are charged here, but in elsewhere. And it's a hardship for the families to go up to wherever they have to go to visit them. But I generally speaking, I think Wyatt was a mistake, and I'd like to see us correct it.
So the concern, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure I understand it, is around ICE using that facility or more broadly. So here's the concern that I have. And I want to say, I mean, ICE, I think, is something that justifiably, probably everybody in this room is really concerned about. If we close the Wyatt, where will detainees go? A lot of them will end up in Florida. A lot of them will end up in Texas. A lot of them will end up in New Hampshire. And in those places, our attorneys in Rhode Island will not be able to as easily bring habeas petitions on their behalf. And that is a very bad outcome. And so during the first Trump administration, there was a movement to close detention facilities around the country so that ICE would not have the beds to house detainees, and that would prevent ICE from detaining people. During this administration, second Trump administration, they have created camps. We will not be able, by closing the Y, to prevent ICE from detaining people. And so I'm open to a conversation about this, but I just want to make clear that it could be that this would have a very, well, I think, with the right frame of mind, I think it could have a very negative unintended consequence for the individuals and families of individuals who are subject to detention.
It has a negative consequence to the families in Central Falls.
Well, that would be part of a conversation, right? If there are folks in Central Falls who do not want to see a detention center, in their community, again, that's part of it. But I want to make sure that if what we're talking about here is trying to do the best we can on behalf of the detainees and individuals who are otherwise in the wild. It could be that closing that facility does them a disservice. And I just want to make sure we have fully thought that through before moving forward.
Thank you. I agree with the individuals up here and their answers. Where would they go? Where would the individuals over there go? How would their attorneys be able to get in best defend them in court? Well, one thing I want to do is, I think we really need to take this to the federal government. We need to do more in Congress. I would testify to Congress to say this system is broken. We need to do more as a country in fixing this problem, because what's going on over there with the enforcement that's going on, we've got individuals that are enforcing the law, and they're not being held to the same rules and responsibilities that our Rhode Island officers are being held to. And people, nonviolent people, are getting detained unnecessarily. One story that comes to me, the video that comes to me, is I remember watching a video early on when this started to come out. And there was a young woman who was, I believe she was in college, walking to her next class. And there were multiple ICE agents that surrounded her with face masks, in plain clothes, coming from multiple directions. And seeing that picture, it just bothers me to watch that, because that individual was not violent. And I think it could be someone's daughter, could be, and we just need to do better as a society, and we need to change our help in Congress to send a new message that that will not be tolerated.
Thank you, Kristen. Good to see you again. My mind immediately went to families. It went to kids and parents that might be closer to visiting their loved ones and having the same concern you've heard voiced already, that if you take that away, it might be nearly impossible for them to see their loved ones if they are detained federally here in Central Falls. The second place my mind went was actually to Mayor Rivera and checking in with the community of Central Falls to get their perspective and their feedback on this. I was actually just reading about Wyatt earlier. They recently filed for bankruptcy, right? They get to walk into the federal bankruptcy court. I've never been this kind of lawyer, so don't take this as legal advice. And, and just say, oh, we want you to get rid of $100,000 of our debt. And that's probably gonna happen, right? And the city, to their credit, under Mayor Rivera's leadership, said, we want more from you. We want community agreements. We want you to give us like $400,000 to make community improvements and an annual charitable donation to nonprofits doing the work on the ground in Central Falls. And so I commend them for pushing back, by the way, on this. And that's the type of Attorney General I hope to be, right? Again, those closeness to the problem are often the solution. But I wouldn't hesitate to go to the General Assembly and say we need to do better. Because at the end of the day, the Wyatt Detention Center was created by state law. It is a quasi-state facility, and we can go right back there and put more conditions on them.
So this is also an audience-inspired question. So we have heard a lot of agreement today on the stage, which is great. What is one way that you would distinguish yourself on a policy issue from the other people here on the stage?
That's a good question.
Kim, can you start?
It's a hard question.
It's a hard question if we don't have a specific policy that we're going over. I would just fall back on a little bit of my career that you've heard me talk about today. I've served under 3 attorneys general, 2 governors, and been the head of 1 state agency. And when I've been able to impact the criminal justice system from a policy perspective, I have always believed what James Montero taught me early on, and I don't want to misquote him, that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest away from resources and power. And when those who are in power connect with those closest to the problem, real change can happen. And yeah, we should talk about that because he's not here. And he taught me that early on when I got to the State House. And then I'm going to tell you how that impacted my work. First, I was so proud to advise a governor to put the first formerly incarcerated member on the parole board, and that happened. Yes, and then I was so proud to also, I was the vice chair of the Criminal Justice Policy Board, which we haven't talked about too much here today, but it's a really important state body where you have all of the criminal justice players, the public defenders, the judges, the nonprofits that do this work, talking about where public safety grant funding goes. And it should be used more holistically, it should be used better, but I was proud to also advise the governor to put a formerly incarcerated individual on that board, and he's still on it today, sitting at the table with the tops of the judiciary and the tops of the public defender's office and the AG's office. And then when I was responsible for the working group for criminal justice reform under Governor Raimondo, we had 2 individuals that were formerly incarcerated. So when I say that I would do that, I've demonstrated that I've done it every step of the way in my career, and that's the type of Attorney General I will be.
So the question is how I distinguish myself on a policy area from another candidate up here. Well, when it comes to fighting back against the Trump administration's attacks on reproductive justice and fighting for our trans communities, I will definitely distinguish myself by fighting as far as I have been every day for the last 10 years as a legislator. I voted to put Roe versus Wade into state law so that Rhode Island women were protected when the Dobbs decision came down and stripped that right away from everyone else in the rest of the country if the state hadn't covered abortion services. Joe Solomon voted against that, right? So that's a lukewarm response from one of the candidates up here on an issue that is so critical to all of us, I think, in Rhode Island, certainly all the people that I care about. And when it comes to ICE, I have to tell you, on the last question, I heard some lukewarm responses about the Attorney General when it comes to Wyatt and ICE. And I have to tell you, Kristen, coming back to that question, I want to be clear. ICE is engaged in a deeply immoral, indeed evil project. And I think that there is no working with them. There's no negotiating with the terrorists, so to speak. You know what I mean? There's no working with them. It has to be fought. It has to be fought at every single level that we possibly can, because Trump and the MAGA movement is an absolute cancer on American society, and this is the most outrageous form of it that we're seeing today. Tomorrow might bring something new, but this has got to stop.
Thank you. Let's get this straight. I am committed to protecting a woman's right to choose. You hear me say it now, and you're going to hear me say it forever. I voted for the SHIELD Act, which would protect women and their doctors from out-of-state enforcement. I voted for the Equity and Abortion Coverage Act, which would provide Medicaid coverage for those who couldn't afford it. And I'm committed to fighting the Trump administration to protect a woman's right to choose. My vote from years ago was prior to the Dobbs decision. Once that Dobbs decision happened, it changed the entire landscape. And now I am committed. Hear me now, hear me later, and I'm committed to protecting a woman's right to choose.
Go, Joe!
One thing I will say is I'm the only person here who's been all of this, a prosecutor, a bail commissioner, a legislator, and a criminal defense attorney. And although some attorneys may spend Some people may spend $500,000 for an expungement. I have many times over the years worked pro bono to protect individuals, to clear their records, because I feel like it's important to give those individuals an opportunity to get a job, to come back into the community, and to build society together, because that's what's important. And I've seen those individuals, the defendants, people with criminal records, and I want to do more to bring them back into society. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And you know, I believe that the Attorney General's office can be such an incredible force for good in this state. We have, what we've been talking a lot about tonight is extensive criminal enforcement jurisdiction, but we also have really important roles to play in our healthcare system, in civil rights, in consumer protection, in economic justice, in environmental protection. I helped to build what we call our public protection bureau that does all that work. I became a unit chief. That is what I have dedicated so much of my time to in the Attorney General's office. And I view the role of the Attorney General as protecting us and fighting for all of us to make our state safer, stronger, and fairer in all these different ways, including in firearm safety. I support safe storage of firearms. I support a high-capacity magazine ban. I support an assault weapons ban because I have 2 children and I worry about their safety every single day. And so do you. Everybody in this community deserves to be safe, from illegal firearms that should not be on our streets. Those laws need to be aggressively enforced by the next Attorney General. And I believe that that is a difference between me and Mr. Solomon as well. Thank you.
The guidelines that we have put in place, I'm just going to give Joe an opportunity to respond.
Thank you. So I guess everybody's going to come after me tonight. So I believe we need to go after the illegal guns. All the time, as a bail commissioner, I see over and over the same repeat offenders with stolen guns, with guns with serial numbers that have been shaved off. We need to go after those violent offenders, the ones causing the crimes. We need to be careful as to not going after the person who who's a lawful gun owner. Because sometimes the laws that are passed, even though they have fancy names and whatnot, if you look at the details, they encompass people just like you and me, who may potentially be committing a crime because of how it was written. So one thing that's so important is that we really need to look at the details, because things are it's just so important. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is another audience submitted question. This is the last question that I'm going to try to ask tonight. We haven't yet touched on the topic of federal litigation in federal court. Just now in this last answer, many of you have referenced the topic of the Trump administration. I want to ask a sort of perhaps technical question. There are several very important live federal cases going on in which the Rhode Island AG is or has been involved with. Just to name 3, the SNAP shutdown withholding, the HSS sharing Medicaid enrollee data with ICE, and the One Big Beautiful Bill Medicaid cuts. Could you pick one of those and describe your approach to best representing Rhode Islanders in that case? And
voter rights.
We can start with Jason.
I abhor the cutting of the social safety net here in Rhode Island and across the country with the bill that the Republicans passed. They shaved out, I don't know the exact number, but it's like a $250 million hole in our state budget for Medicaid, never mind SNAP. And the sharing of data between Medicaid data and immigration authorities is just yet another lever that they tried to pull to engage in this project that I talked about before. I think that when you go to court, right, I really do think of litigators as when we're trying to get a result for a client, it's kind of like you're I don't know, building a piece of furniture, right? You have your raw materials, which is the facts. You have the toolbox, which has all the tools in it. The tools are the law. And so you want to bring each and every law that you can to the project to shape the outcome that you want. In this particular case, in these particular lawsuits, I would use the best set of tools to get us both tactically and strategically on top. But I absolutely believe that the HHS Medicaid sharing thing is susceptible. You know, at the end of the day, the Medicaid cuts and the SNAP thing, that's more likely than not, I think it'll be resolved, it would have to be resolved by the Democrats taking over Congress and reversing that bill, or the Republicans coming to their senses and realizing that a country where poor people are sick, it's not the way we want to live. So that's my answer to you. My answer is we're bringing every tool available, and I'm going to stop.
Excuse me, this is exactly why the press speak up and out, and we have to ask our questions like this, because we don't get our questions asked. He's been waiting, he's not gonna get his question answered, you got safe questions for him.
I did.
No, and they got very pretty words, but we, community members, do not get our questions answered. You haven't answered one of ours.
The questions were submitted by community members.
The people of Rhode Island, I'm a lifelong community member. I am a Native American. I'm a Narragansett tribal member. We don't get our questions asked from you people. Okay, I want to say you people. There's never been a black AG or brown or red one. No one you can really feel for us. You can sit there and talk about being behind the prison bars, but you never been behind the prison bars.
That's right.
There you go, fellas.
Sit here and talk all your pretty words, all you want, but action speaks louder than them, and I am so tired of it. Because you know what this is, Rhode Island? For me as a Narragansett, it's a little Gaza. You killed all my people, and you're building all your houses on them. You're digging up our ancient burial grounds, and you're not doing nothing about it because you're working with the politicians and the developers.
Sound like
You
this.
better get it right, because I'm not going to be a statistic. My son's not going to be, because there's got to be action. We got to get loud.
Yeah, fellas, I've been through this rodeo.
It's tired.
Yeah, thank you for what you have to say about it. And John, I just did want to mention that I read your card, and we had asked that question about.
But John had wanted to ask the question.
This is all a joke. This is a joke. I'm gonna take Nick. Hold on. This is all a joke. I don't see nobody in this room that lives in my neighborhood, in South Providence, and the police go and run in my house because I'm videotaping them while they're searching a female with their hands all in their breasts, and I'm taping it. And not what they do next. They chase me in my own house, wrestle me in my own house, and tuck my phone and toss it over the fence. Poof! Like I'm some Johnny Sauce's head. And I looked at the Attorney General. Oh, yeah. I'm so angry because I'm having a flashback. When they wrestled me in my own house, I'm like 3 cops, and one of the cops, you know, he was just in chokehold. I didn't do nothing but videotape and told him he wasn't supposed to do that without a female officer. So they thought they was going to rough me up, and I was going to bend my head down like I got a lot of lumps up my top of my head now for police brutality. But I had enough was enough. I went to the Attorney General, to the Internal Affairs, to file a lawsuit, and I won my case. I won my case. But here's the other thing. Here's the flip side. The cop that took me in the chokehold, he got a promotion.
That's right. That's
He's
what happens.
colonel. And the other cop, oh, they're sensitive, but he's gonna go do 1 day sensitivity training. This attorney general, I've been to his rodeo right here, and I know my friend James Montero. I know you, Mr. Solomon. I don't know the rest of you guys, but I'm a community activist, and I fight for social justice.
John, how many times did we work together? Ban the box.
Ban the box.
Ban the box, you were there.
Yes,
You were
sir.
there at those meetings, we got that bill passed.
Yes, we
Representative
did.
Scott Slater.
Yes, we did. Yes, we
The thing
did.
is, we're here, this is open doors, there's always an open door. As your next Attorney General, there'll always be an open door in my administration.
So my question to the new attorney general: how many times do an officer get violated of a violation and get promoted to a bigger position? And if you look at Channel 12 News article, they did 697 residents filed complaints with the Providence Police Department. That's a lot since 2018 until now. 697. It's right on my phone. It's on 12 News. Tim White. So my question is, how do these officers get promoted after they violated somebody's civil rights?
Every time.
That's right. The cop that hit gun calls became a detective the next year. We just paid $300,000 to 2 cops that attacked that kid right on camera.
I remember that. I remember that.
Away from Paris. When the Dempster's on the cover board.
I think that one thing we're hearing is
They beat up Suzanne's son so bad, and all 4 cops got promotions.
I'm really glad that you all are having the opportunity to hear the frustrations, because I think what we've heard in the debate so far is a lot of sort of conversations about how you'll solve these problems, or how you have sort of ideas for how you can resolve these. And you know, the truth is that a lot of those are things that people here have heard year after year after year, and their experiences have been very different, and both in terms of police violence, but also, John didn't even mention one of the worst experiences that he had of a miscarriage of justice in his life when he was sentenced to prison in the 80s for a crime that he didn't commit because of a probation violation. We actually tracked down the witnesses in that case, and the people who admitted that essentially he had been targeted falsely, and tracked down the person who did it, who confessed. And so these are examples of things that have been happening for decades, and we know are going to continue to happen. And I guess to sort of try to tie in all those topics would be, are there any specific commitments you can make to us today that will give people in the audience a feeling that you are actually going to be able to change some of these
because
policies?
I do plan on getting kicked out. I'm going to get kicked out. But last question, and I'm leaving. The tribal members up there at your facility, ACAI, have not received their freedom of religion. They are still fighting in court for it. The judges, nobody's doing, the lawyers are doing nothing about it. They're suffering. This is 2026. In your constitution, it states freedom of religion. You got the Jewish people up there with a free diet, a kosher diet. You got them with everything.
That's right.
You got the Muslims up there, thank goodness, with their diet. Now, what about the Native Americans? Because every single body in this room prospers off the backs of the Native Americans.
That's right.
And now, if you want to kick me out because I'm not
We're not
civil,
kicking you out,
I'll
though.
do it.
We're not kicking you
Goodbye
out.
and have a good
We're
night.
not kicking you out. We're not kicking you out, though. Miss. You don't gotta leave. You don't gotta leave, though.
I don't want to apologize, but this is the only way we're ever heard.
It's just bull answers. That's why she's leaving.
You don't know better, no for me.
Hold on, Villanova. 1 second, Villanova.
Come on, man.
Hold on, Joe. 1 second. Villanova, 1 second. Villanova, 1 second. Calm down. Let them answer the first question, then they can answer your
I
second
ain't gonna tell
question.
security how to act though. This is our issue.
Whoa,
Security.
let them answer the first question, then they can answer your second
The
question.
suit tie now.
Whoa,
We're included.
they're gonna answer your question
I'm trying to
though.
hear that. We're not trying to hear.
Let's answer the first question, then they're gonna answer the second question.
There have been a lot of
John
important
and
questions.
Bella,
It feels like maybe we can give you all 90 seconds to try to respond to some of the questions that were just raised here.
So, the first question about excessive use of force. So, there is so much work to do to ensure that we have a justice system, policing system in the state that has the faith of members.
But why is it so much work?
Well, let me give you one example. So we talked about the new lead board tonight, which created a new system for officer accountability when there's an allegation of excessive use of force. And the post police commission on officer standards and training is a really critical part of that. The post budget, as of several months ago, $0. In Massachusetts, the post has a real budget with staff, right? And because to do decertification, for example, which I support a process for decertification of police officers who should not be involved in that profession anymore because of serious allegations that are found to have merit of use of force or any other misconduct. We need to have a post in this state that has the resources to do the job that the legislature has asked it to do. And that is what it means to, take a piece of paper, a law, and give it a value in our communities. We need to not just pass laws, but provide resources to the agencies that are tasked with doing the jobs that we want to see done. And I think that the post is really one example of that in this state. That you'd see more good work. Right now, it's volunteer police chiefs from around the state who comprise the post and come with their free time. There should be funding for their critical work.
But it won't even get to you because many times the police will say it was appropriate force.
Yes. The police chief is covering up for his soldiers, which are his officers. At the same time, it's like a daily battle. A daily battle. If a police officer is out here committing a crime, harassing the homeless, harassing anyone of color, or however, it's like when you go to the police station and you request for the form, you're being questioned and threatened. And most of the time you're being handcuffed or you're being kicked out because you're asking for your right for due process.
I feel like there have been so many good questions, and I do want to give people the opportunity to answer.
There are good questions.
And 1 second.
Yeah.
Also, audience, this is not a thing where we interrupt the people talking.
It should be.
No, but it's not. So let the people talk, and we're gonna keep it like that. All right? Thank you.
Can I have one more question?
No, we're not.
Real quick?
No, we're not doing that.
Why is it that the community comes for this to give support,
Well, we're
when the
not-
support down here in the community?
But we are for the community submitted questions. The community submitted questions, and then we ask the question that the community submitted. Yeah. So not all the questions are going to be asked because we have a limited amount of time. Yeah, actually, we're actually.
I'm sticking around. You want to ask someone? I'll be here after this.
Miss, we're doing expungement clinics at open doors.
No,
Come
but
by.
that's what those are questions that we're asking, we're answering. That's what you're not understanding. Questions that we want to ask aren't being answered to us.
I understand this, but look at it. We have a limited amount of time. We're gonna ask so many questions. It's a debate. We cannot have the audience interrupting the debate because we have a limited amount of time. And this is a civilized, and I know people don't.
This is an AG debate. I don't know why you think that it's not gonna be a little wild, because everybody's sick of everything that's going on.
We don't mind it being wild. We don't mind it being lively. We definitely appreciate you all coming out. We definitely appreciate you coming out. We definitely appreciate you coming out. We definitely appreciate the support, and we definitely want, and they're here for you. They came out for you as well. But
It's because they want us to vote for them.
We don't want to get crazy, and we don't want you to keep interrupting them.
I'm gonna do a lightning round. I'm gonna do a lightning round. I'm gonna answer your question. All right, and I'm gonna do the other one. Number one, listen. I got elected in 2016. I told my voters, I said, I will bring your boys to the State House. I will do what I tell you I'm gonna do. You can take my word to the bank. I voted against the sitting Democratic speaker when I told my voters I would do it, and I got punished for it. I stuck to my guns and I followed through. I kept my word. So now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do as your Attorney General. We will hold rogue police officers accountable. We absolutely will. No more of this police on their own. No more of institutional cover-ups. We are not doing it. My dad was a cop. I've seen it my entire life. I, as your AG, will not tolerate it. On your second question, my number one goal, I'm walking out the office after serving 2 terms, is to improve the reentry system, to make it better than it is now. You did federal time? All right, so federal is federal. But on the state side, it's even worse. So when people come out, where's the Freedom Collective? They here tonight? The Freedom Collective, they're doing great work to try to just give somebody a hand, some stability. Here's a cell phone. Here's a little bit of training, how to use a bank account, all this sort of stuff. There's no reason that the state shouldn't be doing that ourselves, because when we help people get stable after jail, they don't commit more crimes, right? So under my administration, that's my number one goal: get DOC, probation, parole, and the State House together. I need the State House to write a check. What we're going to do, we're going to do some training, we're going to do some education, we're going to do cell phone, and God willing, we're going to do some transitional housing.
Okay, good. Next.
Unfortunately, this is going to be our last round of questions. We only rented the space for 2 hours, so we do have to leave. But if Kim, you could do your best.
Shut this down, I guess. But thank you for all of the comments. And like Jason, I will stick around outside and talk to everybody that wants to get their question heard and answered. Bella Noka, I know we've met over the years, right in this space, yeah. And I just want to commend you for what you just said. And I say this out on the campaign trail sometimes, something you just said. I want to validate that. When I had all staff meetings at the Attorney General's office, which at the time were monthly, I would sit in a beautiful conference room at 150 South Main Street, and you would look up at the walls, and you would see all the former Attorney Generals looking right back at you. And it's an impressive group of men, right? And impressive, I mean, like Sheldon Whitehouse is on the wall, right? All the AGs I worked for are on the wall. And I would think, and I still think about this, well, we don't see on the walls. We don't see any people of color. We don't see any Latino people. We don't see any Asian people. We don't see any indigenous people. We don't see people that look like me that are openly gay. I'm married to a woman. We live in the city of Providence. We're raising 3 kids. You don't see any moms. No. And I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not going to, but I want to acknowledge what you said, because it's important, and it's important for the next Attorney General to care. And so if you think there's a lot of topics that came up, but first and foremost, we could do a better job at the office of hiring people with lived experience, right? Of hiring people that have been in your shoes and actually advise the next Attorney General on all of these things, on reentry, on criminal justice issues like police accountability. And so that's critically important, and I just want to affirm what you said. So thank you. And I will stick around here after for you. Yeah.
So, like the people up here, I'm gonna stick around too. I'll be here to answer questions. If we get kicked out of the space, I'll be outside answering your questions too. But the key is communication. We need to talk about it. You know, I'm not gonna lie and say I know everything that's going on in the community and stuff, but we need to hear from you. That's why I came here, to hear from you guys, to see what's going on, what we can do, how we can change things. Because the only way things are gonna change is if we work together, if we listen, if we work together, the state of Rhode Island's gonna benefit. So let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you all, and I'm sorry we didn't ask and answer all the questions we had. We did our best, and thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all to
We'll see you around. All right. Nice to meet you.